Hey everyone, and welcome back to another tutorial in my series on how to build a desktop application style object-oriented Discord bot in Python. Boy, I've said that how many times now and it never gets any easier. Anyway, what did we do last time and what are we going to take care of this time? Well, we filled out our details UI file pretty well. We created modals and then we created buttons for each of the properties within our profile details class. So now we can set those through buttons and modals instead of using slash commands or something of that nature. But we've got a couple more things that we need to take care of. Specifically down here, we have a to-do that says that we need to write some error logic. So we're going to take care of that. And in addition, I want to do a couple of refactoring things in the code just to clean it up and organize things a little bit more. Okay, so hey, let's jump right in. So the first bit of refactoring that I'd like to do is here in our UI. So I want to create a new file under our UI folder, and we're going to call that file view. Alrighty, so let's go into our common UI folder. And what I want to do is I want to take our frog view and I want to cut the whole thing out of here. We'll delete it from all to, and I want to paste it into the view file that we just created. Okay, this just helps me keep things sectioned off mentally. And we're going to be adding a couple of things to our custom view here. So I decided that it was just time that we break it off into its own file. The way that we're using the package structure here with the init file, however, is as long as we define it under all in this module, then the import behavior in our other modules won't have to change. Since we're saying from UI import such and such, we're actually importing from this init module, this init file here. Let's go ahead and add the view to now. So from .view, let's import star. Okay, now you may have noticed that we didn't define a dunder all over here in our view. That's good. Let's do that now. So we'll define dunder all, and we'll just set that equal to a tuple, and the first item will be frog view. Okay, so we've still got some imports that we need to take care of down here. So let's say the usual from future, import annotations. And then from Discord, we're going to import, I believe, interaction, member, and user. From discord.ui, we're going to import view. And from typing, I want to import type checking, optional, union, and also any as well. I think that covers all of our imports. Yes. And then we'll add the from type checking, or excuse me, if type checking, and we'll pass. We may need to add something here, which is why I'm adding it. Okay. So now we have our frog view in its own file. Let's add a behavior that we didn't add before, okay? So the behavior that I'd like to define in our view, let's define it under the interaction check. And what I want to do is I want to define a method that's already defined. So I'm going to overload this method, and it's called onTimeout. Okay? And it takes in self. Ooh, async def, excuse me, not del. Okay, and it doesn't return anything back to us. So if self.disable on timeout, and keep in mind disable on timeout is a function, or excuse me, a property of the view that's already there. It's already been defined by PyCord. Timeout, okay? So if self.disable on timeout, we're going to say self.disable, oh my goodness, we're going to say self.disable all items. Okay? And the reason that it's not auto-completing here is that I've forgotten to put self in the function. Okay, so that's much better. We don't have any squigglies. So what we're saying is if the behavior of the view is set that we're going to disable on timeout, and we set this in the constructor. So this is a keyword argument that we can pass into our frog view that will be interpreted in the superclass, and this property will be set accordingly. So if we've decided that during instantiation we want to disable on timeout, let's disable everything. Okay? But what if we don't? What if we time out and we don't want to disable all the items? Well, in that case, I want to self.clear items. Okay, so I want to get rid of our view, essentially. I don't want any buttons to show up. I don't want to make the channel messy or make it confusing for the user, because there are a number of times when I've had users come back and use this bot and they've said, hey, that the buttons aren't working anymore, and it's buttons that they sent perhaps yesterday or at another time, and they're timed out, but the buttons are still there. So that's silly behavior, in my opinion. We don't want to present the user with a button if they can't click it. So in that case, we're going to clear the items, and then in either case, whether we've disabled or cleared the items, I want to say await self._edit message helper. Just like that. Okay, we haven't defined this function though. So let's define that right below here. And this behavior is going to look pretty similar to something that we've made before. Okay, so this is going to be async def_edit message helper. And it's not going to take anything or return anything. And then all we want to do in our editing message is we want to try initially to say await self.message.edit. And we're going to say view equals self, okay? Because after we've timed out, we've made some sort of change to the view. We've either disabled items or cleared the items. So we want to use the view as the keyword argument in our edit method to update the message. Okay, but we want to try this. We don't necessarily know that this is going to inherently succeed, because remember, you can respond to a message or an interaction, in two ways. So if you recall, in our edit message helper function in the utils file, we start by saying interaction.message.edit, right? Because we could have a webhook message item. In the event that this doesn't work, we're going to use this exact same behavior right here, okay? So in the event that this doesn't work, we're going to try await self.edit edit original message, right? No, I'm sorry. We need to access the cached interaction. Okay, so this is another reason that we're setting the interaction here. Okay, not only do we need it in the stop method that we've overridden and given some additional deletion behavior, but we're going to need the cached reference to the view's interaction here when we try and edit the initial message to either disable or delete the view components. So we're going to say self._interaction.edit original response, not edit original message. There are two options here. Edit original message is actually depreciated. And in fact, if you try and invoke it, okay, at this time you're not getting an error, but typically we want to be using edit original response, or else you'll get a depreciation warning in your code. So just keep an eye out for that. There's some stuff that's named similarly that you'll get depreciation errors because of. Okay, and then in here, we want to pass the view equal to self as the keyword argument. And then just like last time, if this doesn't work, we're going to pass. And since this is a decorative situation where all we're doing is either disabling or clearing items, it's not super important that we have any kind of statement here, because this may happen actually kind of frequently, but due to the nature of it being purely decorative, it's not actually going to impact our code at all. So we can leave this as a pass and not worry about doing a print statement like we did over here. Okay, so we've defined the additional on timeout behavior. So if our views are left for the duration of their timeout, which we can set at instantiation, they will naturally, because unless we say disable on timeout when we create them, they will automatically clear their items, okay? Because that's going to be the default behavior that we want. Okay, so we can close out of our view file. And what's the next bit of refactoring that I'd like to do? Well, let's go over to profile details class. And here in the status message, where we generate an embed with all of the information in the class, what I'd like to do down here when we're returning our make embed is I'd like to, on the second line where we have the character name, actually not there, I'd like to, above this, I'd like to just define a local variable called character name. Okay, and I want to set this equal to the string that we're going to put in here. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to substitute in character name. And you'll see why in a second. So we're going to say fstring, let's make it bold, character name. Okay, and then we can go ahead and put in the string of self.character name, just like that. Okay, so why have I made this a local variable, though? Well, I want to set our draw separators to also be drawing a separator for the length of the text in character name, which is going to include this identifier here. Okay, and we want to make sure that we plan for those identifiers, which is why we're defining the text out front, so we can put it in this way, and in theory, the draw separator function should be able to handle that appropriately. Okay? Okay, so that's the refactoring that I wanted to take care of, just moving the view and then editing the status message for our profile details class. How about we talk about error handling? Okay, so this is going to be a little bit chunky, but I think it's going to present our users with a nice interface to know what happened and what went wrong and what they can do to fix it. Okay, so let's get into that. Let's start over here in Discord. Actually, let's go ahead and pull up my main Discord, and we'll look at the behavior that we're going to be creating in our error messages. So if I pull up our details prompt here and I put in an accent color that's not actually a value, that can't be parsed into an integer, what's going to happen? Well, we're going to get this message here, and it's going to be an embed giving us an error, and it's going to give the specifics of the error that happened. So we're not just going to tell the user, hey, this is what happened, you messed up. We're going to say, hey, how are we going to fix this? We want to help the user. We want to make this an enjoyable and easy experience for them. So we're going to give them a little hint on how to not encounter this error in the future. Okay? So that's how we're going to be going about it. In our utilities, I want to start out here, and I'm going to make a new Python file, and we're going to call it errors. Okay? Errors with an S, excuse me. There we go. Okay. So how are we going to structure this? Well, if we look back here in Discord, this was an embedded message, and we're getting pretty familiar with embeds, right? So we're going to make an error message that's a subclass of the embedded message object. So up here, let's do our imports from Fuchsia, import annotations. From Discord, we're going to import embed, and we're going to import interaction, okay? Because we need to use embed when we create the subclass. Let me also, above Discord, say from datetime, we're going to import the datetime class. From typing, I want to import optional. We don't need type checking here because all we're doing is defining some static instances of our error messages. You'll see what I mean in a second, but we won't need type checking in this module. We just need optional. Okay, let me grab a horizontal rule here and drop it in. And then, okay, so what do we want to call this? So I think our basic error message should just be called what it is. Okay, so we're going to call this error message, and it's going to be a subclass of embed. But I do want to create a doc string because that's always good practice on superclasses. Subclass Discord embed object acting as an error message. Okay, always good to include those when we remember, which up till this point has been never, but we'll try and do a little better about that. Okay, so let's define our init. And for this, I want to drop it down because we're going to have a couple of parameters here. So we're obviously going to take self, as we do with everything. And then I'm going to make the following arguments keyword arguments by placing a star here. And we're going to be taking in 4 arguments. Okay, so our first one is the title, which is a string, and we're going to need to have the title. Okay, so back over here in Discord, our title is color error, and we always want to have something in that location telling the user what kind of error it is. Next up is going to be the message, which is also a string, and it's going to be required, so we're not setting default values for these, because again, over here in Discord, our message is going to be what comes up under what happened. So what happened here? We couldn't convert the term froggy into a color. Okay, let's also talk about the solution. So this is also going to be a string. And the solution is what's going to be under how to fix. So this is how we're going to be able to present our user with more customized, more detailed error messages than just simply, hey, that didn't work. And the last thing I want to do is I want to pass a description. And this is going to be an optional string because we may not always have information to include in the description, right? So what's the description? Unable to change profile color. This is a good place to put the value that the error was caused by, if that's a situation. So in our color error, we could include the value from the modal within the description saying, hey, this was the value that you put in, that didn't work. So we're gonna add that text so that we can have a little bit more functionality and a little bit more descriptiveness in that sense. Okay, so we've got this. Let's come down here and with all of our UI elements, excuse me, not UI elements, but with all of our subclasses, excuse me, let's call the superclass. Okay, and then we're going to pass in 3 things to the superclass. All right, I want to pass in the title equals the title that we passed. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. I want to pass the description value, which is equal to the description that we passed. Okay, but in the event that this is none, in the event that we haven't passed a description is not none, else embed.empty. Okay, so we're going to give it that sentinel value that it's expecting if we don't decide to pass a description here. Okay, and the other thing I want to do is I want to set the color. And to do that, we need to add color to our imports up here. And I'm just going to pass color.red. Okay, this is a class method that returns this color right here. The color that we have on our error message currently is color.red. So that's made for us. That makes things easy. We don't need to go out of our way to define a color if it's already there, right? Okay, so let's add a couple of things. So in our error message, we've got a field here. We've got a field here. We have this timestamp letting the user know when the error occurred. And we've also got this image over here of a very sad drunken froggy, okay? That's what happens when you get an error. You get a sad frog. That's no good. So we're going to create all those behaviors here in this init method. Okay, so I want to add a field, add field, and then what are we going to do? We're going to make the name of the field what happened. Okay, we want to give the user the information on what happened by passing in the message that we defined when we subclassed this error message class. Okay, so we're not going to say in our code, we're not going to say error equals error message, and then we're not going to pass in the data like that. We're actually going to subclass the error message, so we'll be able to say error equals color error like that, and all of the information is going to be static in that class in this file already. So we don't have to necessarily pass anything in to the subclassed message. Okay, we do want this inline because remember, these are columns, so we want 2 columns here. And let's add our other field. And for the name of this one, we're going to say how to fix. Value is going to be solution. And then we're also going to make this inline as well. Okay? I want to set the self.timestamp equal to datetime.now because we want to tell the user when the error occurred. So if they come back into the channel later on, and they're like, wait, why is there an error here? They can look and see, oh, this happened at 6:45. That was an hour ago. That doesn't really apply to me right now. Okay? Okay, so the last thing that we're going to look at is the image, right? And this image actually might pose us some confusion because we want to have a static a static reference to all of our assets, right? So if this is like a desktop style application, then on a desktop application, you would have a folder where your assets are stored, right? You would have those packaged with your application. However, we don't have quite that luxury here, but we have a different way of storing things. So if I bring up my test account, you see I'm now in this server called bot resources. And this is an internal server that I've made. And since servers are free in Discord, you can make as many of these as you like. And this is where I run my internal commands to do testing. This is where I store my image resources so that I always have a permanent link to that resource, just like this. I haven't set up global errors yet, but this is where my error messages are going to go if we receive anything during production. Okay, and then we've got image void for folks that have submitted images for their profile. We have documents if people want to store documents. I was working on finances for a little while, and then we've got a GitHub commit as well. So lots of cool stuff we can do in a private server. And then as you can see, I'm not an admin on this, but as you can see over here, we only have myself and my bots. Okay, so that's what I recommend that you do. Build a resource server just for your emojis. So for instance, if I open up the emoji picker here, we've got a number of emojis that I use specifically in bot resources. And it looks like my nitro ran out, so we're going to have to deal with that. But this is the benefit of having a resource server, is you've got a home base for all of your assets. Okay, so that's what I want to do here. So in my bot image resources, let me pause the video and find the frog image that I'm looking for. Okay, so we've got our error frog. Let's put that over here. And now we have a permanent link to that image by just right-clicking, copying the link, and we can paste that anywhere. And that's the benefit of using a private server. Again, so whenever we use an image, whenever we upload a custom emoji, we're going to upload that to this server. So we've got a a permanent link to that asset. Okay. So before we copy this image, let's go back into our code, because what I want to do is under assets, I'm going to create a new file and we're going to call this images. Okay. And then I'm going to go into emojis and I'm just going to copy this, because ultimately this is going to be the exact same behavior that we want in our images, except we don't need to import from Discord here, because all we're going to do, error frog, let's call it that. All we're going to do is come back over here into Discord and we're going to copy this link and we're going to make the enum value the link itself. Okay? So let's make sure we go into our init and also say from .images, we're going to import bot images, which we need to rename the class real quick. Instead of bot emojis, excuse me, images, just like that. Okay, and now our init file should be good. Okay, and we can close out of these for now. So in our errors folder, let's go ahead and say from assets, import bot images. Okay, and then down here, I want to say self.set thumbnail, right? Because our thumbnail is the image that is the image that we're applying the error frog to. So bot images dot error frog dot value. Remember that with an enum, in order to access the value on the right hand side, the assigned value, we have to use the dot value. Otherwise, it's going to print the literal string bot images dot error frog, and we don't want that. Okay. So this is all we need to do. We don't need to return anything since we're defining the behavior within the class itself. Okay, so this is all self-contained. But like I said, I want to subclass these error messages into more specific messages so that we can give the user extremely specific information based on the scenario and the error that has occurred, right? So let's do exactly that with our color. So let's define a class and we're going to call it invalid color error. Okay, and this is going to be an error message, okay, because we want this default value here. Excuse me, default behavior. And then really quickly, I want to paste in this doc string. Okay, go ahead and pause the video if you want, just for the sake of copying this. But this is going to help us out a lot when we have error messages, okay? Because elsewhere in our code, if we say error equals invalid color error, and we mouse over that, come on now, it's going to give us exactly what we've put in here into the doc string, which is going to be extremely helpful when we have, in this case, we're going to have a constructor that takes in the invalid value. And so our error message is going to export the invalid value within the description to tell the user, hey, this is what you put in and this is what couldn't be parsed. Okay, so that's why the doc string is here, is basically if we're saying that we require a parameter, I want to know where that parameter is entered within the error message so that we can give it the proper behavior. Okay, so let's define our init for this. Init. And I want to take in the invalid value, which is going to be a string. Okay, because this lets us just directly pass in the value of the modal into here, because remember, an input text always returns a string. So we can just pass that value directly. And then I want to do the super call, so we're calling the actual error message, super.init, this error message constructor that we just defined. And then for the title, I want to pass invalid color value. And then for the description, we're going to put an F string and say you entered. And let's put this between tick marks so we can set the invalid value apart by putting it in a code snippet. Let's say invalid value here. And then for your accent color. All right, let's give them a message. The message is what defines the error. This is the human readable version of what happened, okay? So the value you entered in the modal couldn't be parsed into a hex color. That seems reasonable. And so let's put in our solution. How does the user fix this error? Okay, so let me see here. Oh, right. So I want to say, ensure you're entering a valid hex code comprised of 6 characters. And let's go ahead and drop down just for readability. Put a comma there. Numbers. And let's put this in a code snippet, 0 through 9. And letters, again in a code snippet, A through F. Okay, so I feel like this is pretty descriptive, comprised. And I feel like that's going to give the user some direction in how to solve the error. Okay, so you're welcome to elaborate on that or change it up as desired, but I think this is the behavior that we want for the color error. So let's define our dunder all and export that color error. It equals a tuple, and then we'll just say color, invalid color error right there. So we don't want to export the error message because this is only going to get used internally in order to subclass our further messages. Okay, so only the specific error messages are going to get exported here. So let's not forget to include errors in our utilities init. So from .errors, we're going to import star, okay? And we can close that. And for now, we can close errors as well. Okay, so let's head back into our UI details. And we'll make sure up here that we've imported star from utilities. So we should be able to access the error right here. So let's just set that embed equal to invalid color error, just like that. And we're going to pass in the value that didn't work, right? So we're going to say self.children. So, oh, excuse me, we already defined that right up here at the top. So we're just going to say value, just like that. And this is going to pass the value in and give us an error specifying that that was incorrect. And then we just want to say await interaction dot response dot send message embed equals error, right? And I want to set this as ephemeral equals true, because this is going to make the message personal for the user. It's going to display in the channel in Discord, but it's only going to be visible by the user. So that helps us keep the channel tidy and it's not going to embarrass the user when they continue to encounter an error for color, for instance, because they don't necessarily understand it and they need to try out a few things. So that might happen. And then after this, we want to return. Okay, so that's why we're setting it as ephemeral, so only the user that made the error can see it. It's just a little cleaner. Okay, so let's try that. Let's implement this. Let's test this error. Oh, goodness, what do we have here? We have a circular import. Okay, so let me examine this real quick and pause the video. Okay, so I've located the error, and this is an import error, and this was on me. So when we import from UI right here, it hasn't initialized the package yet, okay? So the issue is that we're trying to import from a partially initialized module, and that's no good. So I want to import these explicitly from within the package. So what I want to do is I want to say from .common, since we're within the package, we could, using the dot notation here, is going to import after the package has been initialized. So we're going to import frog modal and profile section button from common instead of just importing UI as a whole. And in addition, I want to say from .view, we're going to import our frog view as well. Okay, so no more errors in this code. That should cover it. Let's go ahead and rerun. Much better. Okay, that's the phrase we want to look for. So let's head back over into the testing server, and we'll go testing. And let's put in an incorrect accent color. Okay, so we're just going to put froggy, which you can't define, which you can't convert. So let's send this and see what happens. Okay, so something went wrong, and that's okay. So let's head back over into our code and see what happened. Oh, it's because I can't spell. Okay, so let's head down here to where we defined the behavior. Come on now, where is that color modal? There it is. Ephemeral. Okay. All right, let's try this one more time. Thanks for bearing with me, folks. Let's head back over to Discord and try one more time. Okay, so we'll put in an incorrect value for the accent color. And there's our message, okay? So we entered froggy, and it automatically made that uppercase because that's the behavior we're looking for from a hex value. And it gave us our what happened and how to fix. So hopefully this is going to be a little bit more descriptive to the user about what happened, and I think it makes their experience a little bit better because we're trying to be personal with them. We're trying to make it so that they have a good experience. Okay, so we've covered error handling. We did a little bit of refactoring. I think I'm going to stop the video for now, but I'm not sure what we're going to look at next time. But join me and I'll let you know then. So thanks for watching.